Doctor and everyday man Martin Harris awakens from a coma to find his identity stolen by another individual, and even those closest to him don't believe his story. Hello there, everyone. I'm movie critic Nick Iacubucci, back here as always at RealScreenReviews.com, and our next movie review is the action and thriller Unknown. Unknown opened in wide release on Friday, February 18th, 2011, and it stars Liam Neeson, the lovely January Jones, Diane Kruger, and the great character actor Frank Langella. This film comes to us from director Wamkole Sera, the director of the very underrated drama and thriller Orphan from 2009 and the horror film House of Wax from 2005. This time out, he almost sheds completely the horror aspect of the feature and teams with one of Hollywood's strongest leading men to bring us a very crafty story in the style of The Fugitive or Enemy of the State. Our story opens with Liam Neeson gaining consciousness after being a victim to a car crash. He soon comes to learn that someone has stolen his identity, and even his own wife has no knowledge of who he is. Dr. Martin Harris pleads this case to the local police, and nothing is done because nobody believes him in the first place. He quickly becomes the target of hired guns, on the run in a foreign land, and racing toward a deadly enigma that pits him at the center of its complexity. Our good doctor does strike up a dubious friendship with a young woman, and together they start down the path of finding the truth about our hero's true identity. Before this adventure comes to a close, Martin will question not only what his actual name is, but what kind of man he really is by measuring how far he's willing to go to protect it. Well, people, the first half of Unknown is extremely entertaining and interesting, very reminiscent of an episode of Rod Serling's brilliant classic TV show, The Twilight Zone, but unfortunately for me, only the first half was interesting and/or entertaining. Throughout the beginning, there is a constant struggle between sanity and insanity for our hero, and a lot of what was going on also reminded me very much of Christopher Nolan's amazing Memento with Guy Pearce. Now, in both, you have the audience in the same situation as the protagonist. That is to say, you're kind of dim-witted as to what's going on until you are literally fed one clue to the next and so on. Another compliment to Unknown is that it goes out of its way to address point-blank all of the confusing ideas that it brings up. How could this conspiracy possibly work, and how could his wife of 5 years be involved? If anything, it sets up what has to be at least a plausible ending, and it does have that. There are also some very credible car chases through beautiful Europe, and the action is quality throughout as well. However, there is a formula with some mainstream studios based overseas that are taking this recipe and pretty much beating it to death. They're all action films, they all take place in Europe, they all have French writers and directors, and they all pretty much feel exactly the same. Think Taken and From Paris with Love off the top of my head. As the plot unravels and as the pieces start to fall into place, that's when the film basically falls apart for me. Main plot points that are made aren't just reminiscent of other storylines from other existing and better movies, they're out-and-out copies in my opinion. Unknown is nowhere near as good as Liam Neeson's Taken, and when the filmmakers try to push so many surprises, twists, and turns into the story, they should realize when watching the dailies that they're making something so convoluted and messy that it's just not even enjoyable. Denzel's recent actionier Unstoppable and the aforementioned Taken are two of the most simple, satisfying, and well-made films of the last few years. The reason is that both films have a driving force behind them that is completely unrelenting, and it is that simple fact that works so well in those movies that is completely missing from this project. This is just an average film and an average performance from a much above average actor, and I would say that that's disappointing, but so was the film on a whole. It's almost as if there was no one to root for once all the facts were known, or as maybe as it plays out you really just don't care. Liam Neeson is such a presence on screen that he normally elevates weaker projects simply by being in them, but not this time. Even near the end of the film, I had to question not only the action of some of the lead characters, but their motivations as to why they were doing these things in the first place. At 109 minutes, Unknown was an exercise in not capitalizing on a premise done much better many times before. If you're going to rely on the same trick time and time again, and go to the well once too many times, well then eventually you're going to come up dry, and this film couldn't be a better example of that philosophy. I am truly a huge Liam Neeson fan, but this is definitely one that you can wait for. Only 2 stars out of 4, and remember people, I'm not always right, only when it comes to the movies. And thank you for your attention.